Good evening, and right before we dive into this wild report, I'll quickly mention that the richest man in the world, Mr. Elon Musk, he just shared the trailer for our most recent episode over on Epoch TV, an episode where we exposed a ballot fraud scheme that took place during the 2022 midterm elections. Thanks to him, that trailer now has over 11 million views, which is great because exposing ballot fraud is incredibly important, especially ahead of the 2024 presidential election. And so if you want to check out that exclusive episode, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there at the top of the description box below. I hope you check it out. And now, diving into today's main topic. Just yesterday, the special counsel who's been investigating Joe Biden's classified documents case, he came out with a scathing report saying, among other things, that despite the fact that Joe Biden did willfully keep these classified documents, a jury could not find him guilty because his memory has just gotten so bad due to old age. And what's truly interesting about this particular report is that despite the fact that the legacy news outlets have already jumped with article after article after article about how this case with Joe Biden is so much different from Trump's case, well, reading through the report, there are actually a lot more similarities than we previously knew about, with perhaps the biggest difference simply being that Trump was charged while Joe Biden will not be. Regardless, let's dive into the report together. To start with, this man right here is Mr. Robert Hur. He's a lawyer who was previously appointed by President Trump to be the U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland. And in January of last year, in January of 2023, he was tapped by the head of the Department of Justice, by Mr. Merrick Garland, to be a special counsel and to investigate Joe Biden's handling of classified documents. Meaning that for the past year and 1 month, Mr. Robert Hur has been investigating the details surrounding the classified documents that were uncovered in multiple areas belonging to Joe Biden. Areas, I should mention, where those documents should not have been. And after this 13-month-long investigation, just yesterday, the Department of Justice released his official report, the report that you can see up on your screen. Now, in terms of the top line for this report, Mr. Robert Hur, he concluded that Joe Biden did willfully retain classified documents after leaving the vice presidency and that he disclosed sensitive information to those without proper security clearances. Here's specifically what he wrote, quote, "Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. These materials included marked classified documents about military and foreign policy in Afghanistan and notebooks containing Mr. Biden's handwritten entries about issues of national security and foreign policy implicating sensitive intelligence sources and methods. FBI agents recovered these materials from the garage, offices, and basement den in Mr. Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home." And the evidence that they uncovered, which points to the fact that this was willful retention of classified documents rather than just accidental retention, it was actually quite damning. Because you see, the special counsel, he uncovered an audio recording wherein Joe Biden can be heard speaking with a man who was ghostwriting his book. And during these conversations, on multiple different occasions, Joe Biden referenced there being classified materials in his home. For instance, here is one exchange that took place in 2017. Quote, "In a recorded conversation with his ghostwriter in February of 2017, about a month after he left office, Mr. Biden said, while referencing his 2009 Thanksgiving memo, that he had just found all the classified stuff downstairs. At the time, he was renting a home in Virginia, where he met his ghostwriter to work on his second memoir. Downstairs from where they met was Mr. Biden's office, where he stored his papers. He moved out of the Virginia home in 2019, consolidating his belongings in Delaware, where FBI agents later found marked classified documents about the Afghanistan troop surge in his garage." Now, obviously, that is pretty damning. Since this exchange, it alludes to the fact that Joe Biden knew about these classified documents all the way back in 2017, but then instead of handing them over to the government, he instead packed them up and moved them to his new home 2 years later in 2019. There was another exchange that was recorded in these audio tapes wherein Joe Biden was showing his ghostwriter some of his personal notebooks which contain classified information. Quote, "On several occasions, Mr. Biden read to his ghostwriter handwritten entries about National Security Council meetings at which intelligence and military information was discussed. On one occasion, he showed the ghostwriter a word he could not read, but warned that, quote, 'Some of this may be classified, so be careful.'" Now again, this is rather damning, and it's very similar to the evidence that was lobbied against President Trump, who also had a similar audio tape wherein he acknowledged holding on to classified material. However, despite evidence showing that Joe Biden willfully retained these documents, well, the Department of Justice, and specifically Mr. Robert Hur, ultimately decided to not prosecute him. Here's what the report said, quote, "However, for the reasons summarized below, we conclude that the evidence does not establish Mr. Biden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Prosecution of Mr. Biden is also unwarranted based on our consideration of the aggravating and mitigating factors set forth in the Department of Justice's Principles of Federal Prosecution. For these reasons, we decline prosecution of Mr. Biden. And this right here is the point where the report took a wild turn. Because listed among the reasons that they chose not to prosecute him is the fact that Joe Biden's memory has allegedly gotten so bad that a jury will likely not find him to be capable of willfully retaining these documents. For instance, in regards to the Afghanistan files that they found in his garage, here is what Mr. Robert Hur wrote in his report. Quote, "Several defenses are likely to create reasonable doubt as to such charges. For example, Mr. Biden could have found the classified Afghanistan documents at his Virginia home in 2017 and then forgotten about them soon after. This could convince some reasonable jurors that he did not retain them willfully. In addition, Mr. Biden's memory was significantly limited, both during his recorded interviews with the ghostwriter in 2017 and in his interview with our office in 2023. At trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory. Based on our direct interactions with and observations of him, he is someone for whom many jurors will want to identify reasonable doubt. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness." Meaning, in plain English, that the position of the Department of Justice is that the current Commander-in-Chief of the United States has such a bad memory due to old age that a jury would not be able to find that he is capable of willful intent. Furthermore, as painful as it is to read, the details of how Mr. Robert Hur came to this conclusion are perhaps even more striking. Quote, "Mr. Biden's memory also appeared to have significant limitations. Mr. Biden's recorded conversations with his ghostwriter from 2017 are often painfully slow, with Mr. Biden struggling to remember events and straining at times to read and relay his own notebook entries. In his interview with our office, Mr. Biden's memory was worse. He did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended, if it was 2013, when did I stop being vice president, and forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term began. In 2009, am I still vice president? He did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died, and his memory appeared hazy when describing the Afghanistan debate that was once so important to him. Among other things, he mistakenly said he had a real difference of opinion with General Carl Eikenberry, when in fact, Eikenberry was an ally who Mr. Biden cited approvingly in his Thanksgiving memo to President Obama. And primarily because of this issue with the memory and the mental state, the document goes on to write the following, quote, "We conclude that the evidence is not sufficient to convict, and we decline to recommend prosecution of Mr. Biden for his retention of the classified Afghanistan documents." All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. Listen, you've probably heard of a lot of people getting off-label prescriptions for a drug known as Ozempic in order to lose weight. It's a big celebrity trend right now. However, what a lot of people don't know is that about 50% of this type of weight loss actually comes from the loss of muscle rather than the loss of fat. And so while people are losing weight, they're actually losing muscle. And typically, when they stop Ozempic, their weight rebounds. And so perhaps before you pull the trigger on trying Ozempic, consider an alternative. Through his research, today's sponsor, Dr. Stephen Gundry, has gained deep insight into what it really takes to lose weight and to actually keep it off. He himself has lost 70 pounds using his research and has been able to keep it off for well over 20 years and counting. He calls his method caloric bypass, and according to him, it allows people to lose weight, get a lot more energy, improve their digestion, have their joints feel stronger and better, and just generally lead to an overall healthier life. And Dr. Gundry has put together a video laying out his research, which you can watch over at gutcleanseprotocol.com/Roman. That video, by the way, has been watched by over 20 million people thus far. And so check it out. I'll throw a link to that video. It'll be down in the description box below. Check it out. That is, if nothing else, amazing. Now, shortly after this report was released to the public, Joe Biden made a rare appearance at the podium where he actually took questions from the press. And during his remarks, prior to taking questions, he stated that his memory was fine and that part of the reason that he was having a difficult time remembering dates was because the interview with Mr. Robert Hur took place on October 8th and October 9th, right after the Hamas attacks on Israel on October the 7th, and so he claims that his mind was preoccupied. And after making those remarks, there was an exchange between him and reporters. Take a look.
Something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president, I put this country back on its feet, I don't need his recommendation. It's
How
totally out.
bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad I let you speak. That's
Your
my
memory has gotten worse, Mr. President?
My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? You know, I guess I just forgot what was going on.
For months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, "Watch me." Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
Now, it's worth mentioning that in that exchange, when Joe Biden said that that's your judgment, not the judgment of the press, he probably misspoke. He probably meant to say that's your judgment, not the judgment of the public. However, that was not the only time that he misspoke during that press conference, because just a few short moments later, when discussing the war over in Gaza, he referred to President El-Sisi of Egypt as the President of Mexico. Take a listen.
I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate.
And so there you have it. It is a total catch-22 situation wherein the Department of Justice is choosing not to prosecute Joe Biden because they claim he lacks the mental acuity to willfully commit the crime he's being accused of, at least in the eyes of a jury. However, at the podium, he claims that he does have the mental acuity. But if that's true, and if you follow that logic, then doesn't that also mean that he should be charged for retaining these classified documents? The irony is strong with this one. If you'd like to read more about this investigation, I'll throw a link to the entirety of the special counsel's report. It'll be linked right there in the description box below, which I should mention is that same description box right below those like and subscribe buttons, both of which I hope you take a super quick moment to smash so that this information can reach ever more people. And now, as I mentioned at the top of the episode as well, Mr. Elon Musk recently shared the trailer for our most recent episode over on Epoch TV, an episode where we exposed some ballot shenanigans, a ballot fraud scheme that took place during the 2022 midterms. Now, thanks to him, that trailer already has over 11 million views, which is, again, great because exposing ballot fraud is incredibly important, especially in the months leading up to the presidential election. And so if you want to check out that awesome exclusive episode, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there at the top of the description box below. You can just click on that link, and it'll take you to Epoch TV, where you can watch the episode right away. The link is right there again at the top of the description box below. I hope you check it out. It is, in my opinion, a phenomenal episode. And then, until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.